A new indictment against a Democrat-linked Florida businessman who is already facing charges looks likely to expand the existing bribery case against Florida Democrats. I've covered a little bit about this wider investigation against Florida Democrats. Scott Maddox, the former chair of the Florida Democrat Party, already pleaded guilty in the probe, but even the media was noting this summer when he pleaded guilty that it was far from certain that the public corruption probe has ended. There were a lot of signs that there was more to come. This new indictment against JT Burnett, who is already facing charges, is directly linked to the Maddox probe. The investigation against Maddox, it's also interesting, another connection. The investigation where Maddox pleaded guilty already, that factored into the race for governor with Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum, who was defeated by Ron DeSantis. Gillum, a Democrat, who has not been charged with any crimes in the federal probe, but earlier this year, he did agree to pay $5,000 to settle a state ethics commission investigation. Democrats like Hillary Clinton were really hoping that Gillum would win that race. He ended up losing. Gillum was one of the contenders for vice president for Clinton's failed presidential run. Another very interesting update related back to Andrew Gillum with this case has to do with Adam Corey. Here's a picture of Andrew Gillum and lobbyist, also Gillum's friend, Adam Corey, during a New York Harbor boat ride with undercover FBI agents and his brother Marcus. This photo had been subpoenaed by the State Ethics Commission. Now, another article from today says that someone stopped this lobbyist and friend of Gillum, Adam Corey. Adam Corey was stopped on a Miami highway where someone handed him a subpoena for the JT Burnett trial. Former lobbyist Adam Corey, not the easiest man to track down since the FBI's investigation in Tallahassee became public, got handed a subpoena on a Miami highway to testify in John J.T. Burnett's upcoming trial. Corey, the force behind a number of local restaurants and bars, managed to avoid interviews and witness testimony earlier this year in former Mayor Andrew Gillum's state ethics trial, which got short-circuited in a settlement anyway. But he couldn't avoid an aggressive pickup truck in Miami, according to a motion to quash the subpoena filed by his attorney. So Scott Maddox, the Florida Democrat Party chair, JT Burnett, this businessman, and Maddox's business partner, Paige Carter Smith, were all charged. Paige Carter Smith and Maddox already pleaded guilty in the racketeering conspiracy case. And now, just this week, a newly unsealed indictment, again against JT Burnett. Even though he has already been charged, he's being indicted again, and there are new allegations. Maybe a sign of more to come. Federal grand jury in Tallahassee handed down a new indictment against businessman John J.T. Burnett. This sent a strong signal that prosecutors are trying to expand and solidify their case against him using information about crooked City Hall deals from his one-time associate, former City Commissioner Scott Maddox. It's not crystal clear to what extent Maddox or his friend Paige Carter Smith are cooperating in the government's 4-year investigation into public corruption in the capital city. Court records about the possible cooperation are sealed as part of the secretive probe. However, federal prosecutors have said in recent emails with Burnett's defense attorneys they expect Maddox and Carter Smith to testify at his upcoming trial. The emails were included in a Friday request by defense lawyers to delay Burnett's trial. Tallahassee attorney and former federal prosecutor says that the indictment handed down Wednesday all but confirms that Maddox has flipped. Both he and Carter Smith, who pleaded guilty to federal fraud and tax evasion charges in August, face as much as 45 years in prison. Their only hope for leniency hinges on their full cooperation. The new indictment has Maddox debrief written all over it. Maddox is very much cooperating. It's clear that much of the added information involves things that, other than JT Burnett, only Maddox would know about. In other words, taking direct bribes from JT. The indictment, which added new allegations but no new charges against Burnett, details how Maddox stopped a major downtown hotel project in exchange for $110,000 in bribes from Burnett because it would have rivaled his own hotel and office building interests nearby. Burnett initially was indicted in May on racketeering and extortion charges, following the December indictments of Maddox and Carter Smith on several dozen corruption counts. Maddox and Carter Smith, former head of the Downtown Improvement Authority, are scheduled to be sentenced November 19th, several weeks after Burnett's trial is set to begin in U.S. District Court. The indictment accuses the three of running a bribery ring to funnel cash from city vendors to Maddox through lobbying firms he secretly controlled. It paints a particularly unflattering portrait of Maddox pulling strings behind the scenes and working both sides of the issue in 2014 when city commissioners debated the proposal for a new hotel on the corner of Monroe and Tennessee Streets. At the same time, one of Maddox's firms was getting paid to represent the hotel's developer. He was scheming with Burnett, the project's chief opponent, to arrange for the six-figure bribe in exchange for not voting on it, according to the indictment. The McKibben Hotel Group, which had already built the hotel on a portion of the block several years earlier with Maddox as its lobbyist, wanted to construct a sister project next door. After plans for an office building didn't pan out, the company proposed a Hampton Inn and Suites instead. It had an option on the city-owned land, but had to ask for extensions from the city commission several times to meet financial and other benchmarks. McKibben hired Gary Jordan, a political consultant and former county commissioner, as its lobbyist. Jordan, at the time, worked for Governance, one of Maddox's firms, but also had his own firm, the Zachary Group, the company he listed when he registered with the city to lobby for McKibben. In June 2013, McKibben paid Jordan's firm $25,000. The check was deposited the same day into the account of Governance Services, company owned by Carter Smith, but covertly run by Maddox. Several months later, in December 2013, the indictment says Maddox and Burnett came up with their own plan. A company under Burnett's control or influence would hire Governance Services, paying $100,000 in exchange for Maddox abstaining from an upcoming vote on another extension for McKibben. If McKibben's request did not win city commission approval, its project would go down in flames. They arranged for the money to flow through a firm listed in the indictment only as Company A, but confirmed through sources as Kaiser Kane, a construction management company that was involved in deals with the downtown Gateway office and retail building, a Burnett development. Kaiser Kane and its president, Melissa Oglesby, along with Burnett and a number of his firms, were named in federal subpoenas that fell on City Hall in 2017, exposing an undercover FBI probe to the public. Oglesby and a former Kaiser Kane executive, Trey Gardner, along with Jordan, separately testified before the federal grand jury in Tallahassee the same day that the panel handed down the new Burnett indictment. A picture here of Melissa Oglesby, president of construction management firm Kaiser Kane, and Trey Gardner, the former vice president of the firm. It's a photo just from last week outside of the federal courthouse in Tallahassee, October 2nd, 2019. According to the indictment, Carter Smith drafted a consulting agreement for Kaiser Kane and sent it January 8th, 2014 to Burnett, who revised it and sent it back to her the next day. The final version Carter Smith sent Kaiser Kane called for an upfront retainer, $10,000, to cover 3 months of representation and a project management fee of 2% of the total project amount, something that wasn't further explained in the indictment. Kaiser Kane employee sent a signed contract back to Carter Smith 2 days later, calling for the $10,000 retainer and a success fee of 1 or 2%. Meanwhile, Burnett did all he could to block the McKibben project, including filing a complaint with the County Planning Commission that the proposed hotel would undermine efforts to create an 18-hour downtown. But the indictment says Burnett was really worried about competition against his own real estate interests. At the time, he was trying to sell the Hotel Duval, a deal that could have given buyers cold feet if the Hampton Inn were approved a block away. He also was eyeing a new acquisition, the Doubletree Hotel on Adams Street, and he was about to open the Gateway Building with more than $1 million in community redevelopment agency help on the northeast corner of Monroe and Tennessee. Then they talk about the time that Maddox left his chair empty during a debate over the new downtown hotel. February 12, 2014, city commissioners took up a final request from McKibben for more time to meet its contractual obligations, but Maddox left without explanation a few agenda items before it came out. Commissioners deadlocked 2-2 on the request without him there. The McKibben contract expired the following month. It wasn't clear at the time why Maddox skipped the vote, but the indictment suggests he may have been waiting for Burnett's $100,000 bribe to be finalized before officially recusing himself. On February 26, 2014, a governance services bookkeeper sent Carter Smith a $100,000 invoice to Kaiser Kane. The next day, Maddox filed a voting conflict memorandum saying he didn't vote because there is an appearance of conflict of interest since I previously represented the same developer involving the same property. On April 16, 2014, the $100,000 was deposited into governance services. Around the same time, on March 31st, 2014, Kaiser Kane wired about $2.2 million to one of Burnett's firms, IB Tallahassee, referenced in the indictment as Company B. 4 days later, the company bought the Doubletree Hotel for $21 million. Local businessman Erwin Jackson, who has long complained about corruption at City Hall, filed a state ethics complaint against Maddox over McKibben votes and other matters. However, Maddox told ethics investigators he had divested himself from interest in governance and was never affiliated with governance services, which turned out to be lies. The Florida Commission on Ethics, finding no probable cause, dropped the complaint. They add a few final recent signs here that Maddox is cooperating with the case. Maddox's attorney declined to comment. One of Burnett's lawyers said earlier that he and his client categorically deny the new allegations, which he labeled false. Oglesby and Gardner also declined to comment as they left the federal courthouse on Wednesday. Spokeswoman for the McKibben Hotel Group did not reply to an email. Jordan, who appears to be cooperating in the FBI probe and was described in court documents as a witness, said in a written statement his recent testimony before the grand jury lasted less than half an hour. Jordan is saying, for his part, as dramatic as this seems, my role as a witness was actually very benign. I was asked by the U.S. Attorney to confirm my role as a lobbyist for a proposed hotel project and to confirm that proposed project was legitimate. I have no knowledge of what others may or may not have been doing regarding the project at the time, nor was I even asked about any other allegations in the most recent indictment. Meanwhile, Jansen and another lawyer for Burnett asked the U.S. District Judge in a Friday motion to delay the client's upcoming trial. They included in the request emails confirming that the U.S. Department of Justice anticipates that Maddox and Carter Smith will testify. Yes, we anticipate producing amended witnesses and exhibit lists. We expect that Scott Maddox and Paige Carter Smith will testify at trial. We will provide the amended lists as soon as possible. In their motion, Burnett's lawyers complained the federal government made a tactical decision to wait a month before trial to level more than 20 new allegations against their client. They said, quote, "By doing so, the government substantially changed and expanded the purpose of the alleged enterprise and expanded the timeline," the filing says. Discovery pertaining to these new allegations has yet to be produced. In addition, Burnett and his counsel must be given the time to conduct his own discovery and investigation into the new allegations. So, some interesting recent updates on the case with this new indictment against Burnett, and also the recent news about this subpoena against lobbyist Adam Corey, a friend of Andrew Gillum, high-profile Democrat. I'll continue to follow this and anything related. Please leave a comment and tell me what you think. If you could leave a like on this video, that's greatly appreciated, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Thanks everybody that's been sharing the channel and sharing these videos, helping to get the information out there. Also, thanks again, all supporters on Patreon and PayPal. Thank you very much. Both links in the video description. You can support the channel directly there too. I'll follow up soon. Thanks, everyone.